This video is brought to you by Patreon supporter Scott.
Hello and welcome. You find yourself checking out this GEISSELE Super Precision mount, courtesy of Patreon provider, again, Scott. Of course, no surprise there. He had sent this and an optic in for a review together, and now that I've basically finished with the optic, I can now check out the mount. So what exactly is this? Well, if you couldn't tell from the title, it's a GEISSELE Automatic Super Precision, 30mm 0 MOA cant, and it's a pretty nice mount, with a few caveats, however. Right off the bat, Super Precision tells me that this thing is built to the absolute highest standard. And it seems, on the surface at least, that it appears to be so. It's got some really nice features that I like. Again, we'll start at the bottom. Namely, these little locks that interlock with the Picatinny rail, which do help keep it from sliding forward and back. That's a really nice touch, one that you don't really see on many mounts. However, one thing I'm not overly keen on are these hex nuts that they have over here. It's a standard 1/2 inch hex, like you find on a lot of other mounts. But it just doesn't feel to me that it belongs on this mount, especially when you start factoring in the price. But I'll get to the pricing in a little bit. It just doesn't look right. There's something off-putting about it. It just protrudes too far off to one side, and it takes away a lot of the elegance from these beautifully shaped caps. GEISSELE obviously went through a lot of trouble making sure these caps looked as nice as they are. I mean, look at the little pockets that they machined on top to save weight or just make it look pretty. I mean, they also did that with this rib in the middle, which we'll get to in a second. But I don't know, they just don't look like they belong. I would prefer, personally, if there were two little screws here that match the cap screws. That, in my mind, is an ideal situation when you have a cap like this or you have locks like this. Primarily because you only have to worry about one, in this case, Torx driver, to not only remove the caps if need be in the field, but also remove the scope base as well. Now you need a Torx bit for the caps and a 1/2 inch wrench for the main base. It's just too much. Yeah, a little bit. Anyway, that's my only real gripes with the bottom. If this doesn't bother you, great. It just doesn't, in my opinion, look right. Also, what happens if you have a left-handed bolt action? You have to worry about this thing clearing a bolt when you go to cycle it. Now, granted, this is offset forward for a AR platform rifle, more than likely, but still, it's something to think about. Anyway, let's go on to the positives, which again is the overall look of this mount with the exception of these hex nuts. It looks very elegant and well suited. The claws on the side look nice, even though for a Super Precision, maybe a little bit wider, get a little bit better purchase on the rail. Again, maybe a pet peeve of mine. I'm sure you don't need more than this, but it might be a little bit nice. The caps on top, however, are really nice, and these are serialized and matching. So A to the front, B to the back. Also, the inside machining on this thing is buttery smooth, as you'd expect with a name like Super Precision. Oh yeah, and as far as the price goes, this is around $325. So it's not what I would consider to be on the affordable side of mounts. However, when you put Super Precision on something, you expect it to be a little bit more anyway. Now, as far as the caps go, no problems with that. They look good. They are matching, so I'm sure that you can torque this down on one side and then tweak up the other side and it'll be good. But there's one thing that I don't like about this, and it's one thing that the Scalar Works mount that I just reviewed did perfectly. You see, with that, all you had to do was bump up the set screw even with the bottom of the scope, and your scope is leveled. With this, you're going to need special tooling, more than likely levels, because if you remember from that video, the only other way to do it is to get something like this, a vernier micrometer or a caliper, slide it in between the body of the scope and the mount, twist, and then tighten. Like I said before, it's a three-hand operation and it takes a little getting used to. But what's one thing you notice about this rib? It's awfully narrow. And for me, using this method, the wider the base, the better. This is at most 1/4 inch. In fact, let me not even guess. Let me get in there without scratching it. And if you can read a vernier, that is 1/4 inch. So why? To save weight? To make it look nice? I'd almost prefer if it was a little bit farther down and the full width of the body because it'd be a lot easier to get in there and make everything level. That's a miss in my book. Granted, yes, there are other ways of doing it. You can have levels and this and that. But what happens if you don't have a set of levels? Now you have to worry about buying a set of levels and a $325 mount. Just misses the mark, I feel. Now, another thing you have to note when you're mounting this is you have to make sure everything is perfectly lined up, because if not, it becomes a real pain in the butt trying to get this on and off. There we go. What is this block, you might ask? This is what I use to mount optics inside mounts when I don't want to put it on a gun or in a vise. Now, how this looks on a rail, again, is pretty nice. I actually kind of like how this is boxed out like this, but again, you have to worry that your action is going to clear this. The same thing goes for this side. It's just cumbersome and bulky, and it really doesn't look good with the rest of the mount. Now, yeah, what does it really matter what something looks like? Well, if you didn't like the look of your car, that might be a problem, or the look of your wife or your boyfriend. For me, the same thing goes with optics and mounts. It's got to give me that next level of pleasure. Now, if you watch the shallow mount video, you'll know what this weighs. But if not, let's give it a comparison. 7.4 ounces isn't that heavy, all things considered. But if you're going to spend $325, you could spend a little bit more and have something that's roughly 2 ounces lighter. Or if you want to go the opposite end, you can buy something from American Defense that's almost half the price. This is around $200, and it weighs only about an ounce heavier than that. You got to see what you want. Granted, but you might be saying, see, if I have this on precision rig, I really don't care about an ounce or two. Granted, you have a very valid point. But again, for the price of this, I don't know. I would probably look elsewhere, especially considering how boxy and how wide this is. Compare this to the Shallow Works. Look at the difference there. It's massive. Even so, with the American Defense. And the American Defense has really nice, quick, adjustable nuts over here to help put tension on the quick release levers. In fact, I would almost hazard a guess and say they're almost the same width. And this has quick release levers on it. On my last positive of this mount, it is incredibly nicely machined and the finish is basically perfect. What you'd expect from something of this price point. It just misses the mark, in my opinion, completely my opinion, with a couple of things. Now, Scott seems to be very happy with it, and I'm very happy that he's happy with it. But for some of you, you have to keep in mind that this might interfere with your action. For the rest of you that think that this is the best mount ever made, I hope you really enjoy it. For me, I'd probably spend my $325 elsewhere. But again, that's just me. A huge thank you again to Patreon provider Scott for sending this in for review. Without you, this video couldn't be possible. And a huge thank you to all of you out there for watching this video. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.
And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you, this wouldn't be possible.